Here's what people don't understand about being the unfavored child. It's not the lack of money that destroys you. It's the casual certainty in their voices when they explain why you don't deserve it. My parents paid $127,000 for my twin sister Rachel's tuition at a private university. They paid $0 for mine. When I asked why, my father didn't even look up from his newspaper. Rachel has charisma, Emma. She has presence. You're steady, reliable, but you don't have that spark. My mother nodded, sipping her coffee. We're investing in potential, sweetheart. It's just good financial planning. My name is Emma Hartley. I'm 27 years old, and I'm an associate director of nursing at Connecticut Valley Medical Center. 5 years ago, my parents told me I didn't have potential. Last week, they realized they were catastrophically wrong. I was 18 years old, standing in our pristine colonial kitchen in Fairfield County, Connecticut, learning that my own parents had calculated my worth and found it insufficient. Rachel got a brand new Audi and a fully funded ride to Boston University. I got a used Honda Civic and a pamphlet about student loans. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It either crushes you or it builds you into something they never saw coming. 5 years later, at our respective graduate ceremonies, my mother grabbed my father's arm in the middle of the auditorium and whispered 3 words that I'd waited half a decade to hear. "Derek, what did we do?" This is the story of how I turned their doubt into my fuel, their favoritism into my freedom, and their investment mistake into the most expensive lesson they'd ever learn. And I didn't have to do a single malicious thing to make it happen. Before we dive into how I rebuilt myself from that rejection, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. And I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your city below in the comments. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Rachel and I were born 12 minutes apart on a snowy February morning in 1998. She came first, screaming and red-faced, demanding attention from her very first breath. I came second, quieter, smaller, already learning to take up less space. My mother used to joke that we split one personality between us. Rachel got the charisma, I got the competence. For the first 16 years of our lives, I didn't mind. Rachel was my best friend, my other half, my built-in companion. We shared a room until we were 14, whispered secrets under blankets, defended each other against middle school cruelty. When Rachel forgot her science project in 8th grade, I stayed up until 2 a.m. helping her build a volcano because I couldn't bear to see her fail. When I had a panic attack before my driving test, Rachel held my hand in the DMV parking lot and told me I was the bravest person she knew. I have this memory, crystal clear, from the summer before our senior year. We were at our family's lake house in the Berkshires, lying on the dock under stars so bright they looked fake. Rachel turned to me and said, "Em, when we're old and successful, we're buying houses next to each other, okay? I don't care where we end up. I can't imagine life without you." I believed her. God, I believed every word. We both wanted to go into healthcare. Rachel talked about becoming a pharmaceutical sales rep. I love people and I love helping them feel better. I wanted to be a nurse, actually work with patients, make a difference in the moments that mattered. Our parents seemed supportive of both paths. Senior year, we applied to colleges together, stayed up late comparing acceptance letters, dreaming about dorm rooms and football games and freedom. Rachel got into Boston University's business program. I got into the same program. We were going to be roommates, navigate college together, stay inseparable. That was the plan. Then came the conversation that split my life into before and after. It was March of our senior year. Rachel and I had just gotten home from a celebratory dinner, both accepted, both ready to commit. We walked into the living room where our parents were waiting, and I remember thinking how formal they looked sitting on the couch like they were about to deliver news. Good news, I assumed. Maybe they'd planned a graduation trip for us. My father cleared his throat. "Girls, we need to talk about college funding." Rachel flopped onto the love seat, all casual confidence. I sat carefully on the ottoman, already sensing something was off. "We've thought long and hard about this," my mother began, her voice taking on that smooth, practiced tone she used at charity events. "And we've decided to fully fund Rachel's education at BU. Tuition, room and board, books, everything." Rachel squealed. Actually squealed. I felt my smile freeze. "And for Emma," my father continued, not meeting my eyes, "we think the state school route makes more sense. UConn has an excellent nursing program, and it's significantly more affordable. You can commute from home for the first 2 years, then maybe get an apartment for junior and senior year. We'll help where we can, but the majority will need to be loans and part-time work." The room tilted. I don't understand. I got into BU too, same tuition. Why, Emma?" My father finally looked at me, and his expression was patient, almost pitying. "Rachel has something special, a personality that opens doors. She's going to network, make connections, build a career where presence matters. You're going to be a nurse. A noble profession, don't misunderstand me, but it's a job with a clear path and a salary ceiling. It doesn't make financial sense to invest the same amount." My mother reached over and patted my knee. "You're our steady girl, Emma, self-sufficient. You'll be fine with loans. Rachel needs our help more. She's not as naturally disciplined as you are." Rachel was still smiling, but something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or was it relief? "Em, you understand, right? I mean, you're going to be a nurse. You'll have a job right away. I need to build a whole career from scratch." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The two people who were supposed to believe in me most had just publicly declared that I wasn't worth the investment. And my twin sister, my best friend, my other half, was nodding along, already accepting their logic as truth. That night, under the same roof where we'd grown up together, Rachel unpacked brochures for BU clubs and activities, already planning her glorious future. And I sat in my room with a calculator and a financial aid packet, learning exactly how much my parents thought I was worth. $0 and 0 cents. The change didn't happen overnight. That's the insidious thing about favoritism. It's like carbon monoxide, invisible and suffocating, killing you slowly enough that you don't realize you're dying. Rachel left for Boston University in August with a car full of new furniture, designer bedding, and a credit card for emergencies. I started at UConn's regional campus with a used backpack and a work-study job in the library that paid $9.25 an hour. The first semester, I took 18 credits and worked 25 hours a week. Rachel took 12 credits and joined a sorority. We still texted, but the conversations felt different, surface level. She'd send photos from mixers and football games, and I'd respond between shifts at the hospital where I'd picked up a second job as a patient care assistant. Night shifts, usually, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., then an 8 a.m. anatomy class, then library duty, then studying until I fell asleep over my textbooks. Rachel came home for Thanksgiving our freshman year with highlighted hair, a designer handbag, and stories about a boy named Connor whose family had a house in the Hamptons. My mother hung on every word, refilling her wineglass, laughing at every anecdote. My father beamed like she'd won a Nobel Prize instead of attending one frat party. I mentioned that I'd made the dean's list with a 3.94 GPA. My mother said, "That's wonderful, honey," without looking away from Rachel. Christmas was worse. Rachel got a ski trip to Aspen with her sorority sisters, fully funded by our parents, naturally. I got a $50 Amazon gift card and a sweater from Marshall's. When I opened it, my mother said, "We figured you'd appreciate something practical." Rachel's gifts took up half the living room. I remember the exact moment I realized my sister had changed. It was spring break of sophomore year. Rachel came home with her friend Madison, a blonde girl who wrinkled her nose at our house like it smelled bad, even though my mother had deep cleaned for 3 days straight. They were planning a trip to Cancun. Again, on my parents' time. I'd just gotten home from a double shift, exhausted, still in scrubs. Rachel looked me up and down and said, "Em, you look terrible. When was the last time you slept?" but her tone wasn't concerned. It was pitying, almost disgusted. "I'm working," I said quietly. "Some of us have to." Madison laughed. "God, I could never. I'd literally die without my 8 hours." Rachel didn't defend me, didn't say, "Actually, Emma's incredibly strong," or "she's putting herself through school." She just changed the subject to swimsuit shopping. That night, I heard her on the phone with our mother. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, our walls were thin, and Rachel wasn't trying to be quiet. "I worry about her, Mom. She's so intense, like all work and no fun. It's kind of depressing. Do you think she's okay?" My mother's response was muffled, but I caught the words, "always been serious," and "different temperaments." "I just think," Rachel continued, "maybe you and Dad were right. Like, she's built for this kind of life, the grinding, the routine. I would lose my mind, but she actually seems, I don't know, content. She doesn't need what I need." I pulled my pillow over my head and didn't cry. I'd learned by then that crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Tears didn't pay tuition. By senior year, the gap had become a chasm. Rachel was coasting through her business degree with C's and one charitable B, spending her weekends at Newberry Street brunches and her weekdays half hungover in classes she barely attended. Our parents still fawned over her mediocre accomplishments. When she landed an unpaid internship at a marketing agency that she quit after 6 weeks because the commute was exhausting, my father took her out to celebrate at a steakhouse. I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.97 GPA and job offers from 3 hospitals. My parents came to the ceremony but left early because my mother had a hair appointment. They took Rachel to dinner that night without me because she'd had a hard week failing 2 finals she hadn't studied for. The graduation present disparity was the final, undeniable proof of everything I'd spent 4 years trying to deny. Rachel got a new Audi A4, pearl white with custom leather interior, $45,000 easy. I got a card with $200 inside and a note that said, "Proud of you, honey. You did it all on your own." The subtext was deafening. Because you had to, because you're not worth more than this, because we already spent our love on someone else. Rachel hugged me at graduation and whispered, "You're so lucky, Em. No pressure, no expectations. You get to just be." I smiled. I'd gotten very good at smiling. The real betrayal didn't come until a year after graduation. By then, I'd passed my NCLEX on the first try, landed a job at Connecticut Valley Medical Center, and moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in New Haven. I worked the ICU night shift, the slot no one wanted, because it paid a 20% differential and I had $47,000 in student loans to destroy. Rachel moved back home. The internship she'd quit was followed by 3 more jobs she couldn't keep. A boutique PR firm, the boss was micromanaging me, a startup marketing agency, toxic culture, and a corporate sales position, soul-crushing. Each failure was met with parental sympathy and financial bailouts. My father paid her rent when she briefly tried living in Boston. My mother covered her car payment when she was between opportunities. I was paying down $800 a month in loans and picking up extra shifts to build my emergency fund. Then Rachel decided to get her MBA, not because she loved business or had some burning entrepreneurial dream, because, in her words, I need more credentials to be taken seriously. She got into Fairfield University's MBA program, not competitive, not prestigious, but expensive, $52,000 for 2 years. My parents wrote the check without blinking. That's when I decided to do something for myself. I applied to Yale's Master of Science in Nursing program, specializing in healthcare administration. It was competitive, one of the best in the country. I didn't tell anyone I was applying because I couldn't bear the possibility of my parents' indifference if I got in. I got in, full acceptance. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot at 6 a.m. after a night shift and cried reading the letter. I decided to tell them in person. It was a Sunday dinner, the monthly obligation I still forced myself to attend. Rachel was there, complaining about her MBA statistics class. My parents were sympathetic, nodding along to her struggles with basic Excel functions. I waited for a lull in the conversation. "I have news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I got into Yale for my master's in nursing administration." My mother looked up from her pot roast. "Oh, that's lovely, honey." My father nodded. "Congratulations. Will your hospital help with tuition?" "Some," I said. "They have a reimbursement program, but I'll still need loans for the rest. I was hoping—" I hated myself for asking, but some desperate part of me needed to know. "I was hoping maybe you could help, even partially. It's Yale. It's an incredible opportunity. And Emma," my father's voice was firm, almost annoyed, "we've already explained our financial philosophy. You have a good job, you can take loans. Rachel needs our support right now while she's building her foundation." Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. She was texting, half smiling at something on her screen. My mother reached across the table, her expression what she probably thought was kind. "Sweetheart, you've always been so capable. You don't need us the way Rachel does. That's not an insult, it's a compliment. You're independent." "I worked night shifts for 4 years," I said quietly, something breaking loose inside me. "I graduated with a 3.97. I have 3 years of ICU experience. I got into Yale. Doesn't any of that matter to you?" "Of course it matters," my father said, his tone suggesting the opposite. "We're very proud. But Rachel is at a delicate stage in her development. She needs stability, financial security, so she can focus on her studies. You're already established." I looked at Rachel then, really looked at her. My twin sister, my supposed best friend. She was still on her phone, scrolling Instagram, wearing a designer sweater I knew cost $300 because she'd tagged the brand last week. She had no job, no debt, no understanding of what it felt like to choose between groceries and textbooks. And she still didn't look at me. "Rachel," I said, "do you think this is fair?" She finally glanced up, startled to be addressed. "What?" "Do you think it's fair that they paid for everything you have and nothing I've earned?" She blanked, confused by my tone. I never challenged her, never rocked the boat. We're different people. We need different things. You've always been fine on your own." "Because I had no choice," I said. My mother sighed, that long-suffering sound that meant I was being difficult. "Emma, this attitude isn't attractive. Life isn't fair. You're 23 years old. It's time to stop expecting your parents to solve all your problems." I almost laughed. I'd never expected them to solve anything. I'd only wanted them to care that I was solving everything alone. I left dinner early, drove home in silence, and made a decision that would change everything. I was done asking for their approval, done waiting for them to notice, done being the capable, steady, forgettable daughter who didn't need love because she had competence. I was going to Yale. I was going to excel. And I was going to do it so undeniably, so publicly, so brilliantly that their neglect would become impossible to ignore. Not for revenge, for me. I'm going to pause here for a second. If this story is resonating with you at all, or if you've ever felt the pain of being misunderstood by the people who are supposed to love you most, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really lets me know that sharing these hard stories is worth it. The next 3 years were the hardest and best of my life. I took out loans for Yale, big ones, but I negotiated with my hospital. They'd reimburse 50% of tuition if I committed to 2 years post-graduation. I picked up per diem chefs on weekends. I lived on $30 a week for groceries. I didn't go out, didn't date, didn't do anything that wasn't work, school, or sleep. And I thrived. Yale's program was rigorous, filled with brilliant people who treated healthcare like a calling, not a fallback. I studied hospital systems, healthcare policy, financial management, leadership theory. I wrote my thesis on improving nurse retention in critical care units through structural change, not pizza parties. My advisor told me it was publishable. Rachel, meanwhile, was struggling through her MBA. She failed 2 classes her first semester and had to retake them. My parents blamed the professors, the program, the stress. Never Rachel's complete lack of work ethic, or the fact that she skipped class to get her nails done. I didn't gloat, I didn't say a word. I just kept working. The distance between us grew into silence. Rachel stopped texting unless she needed something, advice on a paper she'd procrastinated, sympathy about a professor who had it out for her, complaints about how hard her program was. I responded politely, briefly. I had nothing left to give her. My parents called monthly, always with the same script. How was work? How was school? That's nice, honey. Then they'd pivot to Rachel, her struggles, her stress, her need for support. Could I maybe talk to her, help her with her assignments? She respects my intelligence after all. I was a free tutor, a cheerleader, an emotional support system, but never a daughter worth investing in. The shift happened in my second year of Yale when I was promoted to charge nurse in the ICU despite still being in school, then to assistant nurse manager. My supervisor, Karen, a tough woman who didn't compliment lightly, told me I was the most natural leader she'd seen in 20 years. You don't lead through ego, she said. You lead through competence. That's rare. I started getting invited to hospital committee meetings. Quality improvement, patient safety, budget planning. At 25 years old, I was in rooms with directors and VPs, contributing ideas that actually got implemented. Rachel graduated with her MBA 2 months before I finished at Yale. She barely passed, no honors, no awards, no job prospects. My parents threw her a graduation party at the country club, 200 people, open bar, a DJ. They spent $15,000, easy. I wasn't bitter. I'd moved past bitterness into something colder and clearer, complete emotional detachment from their approval. My Yale graduation was small. A few colleagues came, my roommate from undergrad drove up. Karen came, which meant more to me than anything my parents could have done. They sent a card, didn't attend. My mother called the night before and said, "You understand, honey, it's such a long drive and your father's knees have been bothering him." Rachel's graduation party had been in Newport, a 90-minute drive each way. They'd stayed overnight at a hotel. The message was clear. I didn't matter enough for even mild inconvenience. But here's what they didn't know. A week before my graduation, I'd been offered a position at Connecticut Valley Medical Center as Associate Director of Nursing for the Critical Care Division at 26 years old, youngest person to ever hold that title at the hospital. Salary? $98,000, plus benefits and a signing bonus. I didn't tell them, didn't announce it, didn't seek their validation. I accepted the job, graduated summa cum laude from Yale, and got a letter 2 weeks later. My thesis was accepted for publication in the Journal of Nursing Administration, a peer-reviewed, nationally recognized journal. My name, my research, my work. Rachel was living at home, sending out resumes to entry-level marketing positions and getting rejected. My parents were paying for a career coach to help her find her passion. I was building something they couldn't see because they'd never bothered to look. The final piece fell into place 6 months after my graduation. Yale announced their continuing education graduation ceremony, a combined event for all graduate programs from the calendar year, a formal recognition for master's and doctoral candidates. Big, prestigious, held at Woolsey Hall with distinguished speakers and awards. And I'd been selected to receive the Dean's Award for Excellence in Nursing Leadership. That's when I sent my parents an invitation. Professional, formal. I told them what it was. I told them I was receiving an award. I told them it would mean a lot if they came. They said yes, of course they'd come. They were proud. Rachel had also been invited to the same ceremony. Fairfield University was participating. No awards for her, just a name in the program. My mother suggested they all sit together, make it a family event, celebrate both of us. I said sure. I smiled. I hung up the phone, and I waited. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. I went for a run along East Rock, watching the sun rise over New Haven, over the city where I'd rebuilt myself into someone I actually respected. I wasn't nervous. I'd stopped needing their approval so completely that it felt like freedom. I put on my Yale master's regalia, the royal blue hood with white silk lining, the velvet trim. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't recognize from 5 years ago. Stronger, calmer, unbreakable. My parents and Rachel arrived at Wolsey Hall 30 minutes before the ceremony. My mother wore a designer dress, clearly ready for photos. My father looked distinguished in his suit. Rachel looked bored, scrolling her phone in the lobby. My mother hugged me, air kissing both cheeks. "You look lovely, honey. Where are we sitting?" "Guest section," I said. "I'll be with the graduates on stage." "On stage?" My father raised his eyebrows. "The whole time?" "I'm receiving an award, remember? I'll be recognized during the ceremony." Rachel glanced up. "What kind of award?" "The Dean's Award for Excellence in Nursing Leadership. It's given to one graduate per year." Silence. My mother blinked. Rachel's expression went carefully blank. "Well," my father said, clearing his throat, that's quite an achievement." I smiled. "Thanks, I should go. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes." I left them there, processing, and took my seat in the front row of graduates, right next to the aisle, the seats reserved for award recipients. The ceremony began with pomp and formality, the processional, the welcome from Yale's president, a keynote speech from a prominent healthcare CEO. I sat quietly, hands folded, breathing steadily. Then came the recognition portion, master's candidates by program, business, education, public health. When they called the nursing candidates, I stood with my cohort, 15 brilliant people I'd spent 2 years alongside. We were recognized as a group, applauded, seated. Then the dean of the School of Nursing stepped to the podium. Dr. Patricia Chen, a woman I deeply respected, adjusted her microphone and smiled. "Each year," she began, "we have the distinct honor of recognizing one graduate whose contributions to nursing leadership, scholarship, and practice exemplify the very best of our profession. This individual doesn't just meet our standards, they set new ones." I felt my heart rate slow. Everything sharpened into focus. This year's recipient demonstrated exceptional leadership in clinical practice while maintaining a 4.0 GPA throughout the program. Her thesis, Structural Interventions for Critical Care Nurse Retention, has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Nursing Administration and is already influencing policy discussions at hospitals across the region. In my peripheral vision, I saw my mother lean forward in her seat. She balanced full-time clinical work with rigorous academic demands, served as a mentor to junior students, and consistently demonstrated the kind of quiet, powerful leadership that transforms systems, not through ego but through excellence. My father was staring at the stage now. Rachel's phone was down. "It is my distinct pleasure to present the Dean's Award for Excellence in Nursing Leadership to Emma Christine Hartley. Emma, please join me on stage." The applause was immediate, thunderous. I stood, smoothed my robes, and walked up the steps to the stage. Dr. Chen handed me a crystal award and a certificate, then pulled me into a genuine hug. "You earned this," she whispered. "Every bit of it." I stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces. I found my parents in the crowd easily. They were frozen, my mother's hand gripping my father's arm, both of them staring at me like they were seeing a stranger. I didn't prepare remarks. I spoke from the heart. Thank you, Dr. Chen, and thank you to the faculty who believed in me even when I didn't fully believe in myself. This award represents more than academic achievement. It represents a fundamental truth I've learned over the past 5 years. Your worth isn't determined by who invests in you. It's determined by what you invest in yourself. I paused. Let that land. There were many people who told me, directly or indirectly, that I didn't have potential, that I was steady, reliable, but not exceptional, that I was built for support roles, not leadership. I want to thank those people too, because doubt, when channeled correctly, becomes the most powerful fuel for transformation. My mother's face had gone pale. My father's jaw was clenched. To my fellow graduates, never let anyone else's limited vision become your ceiling. You know your worth. You know your capacity. Trust that, even when, especially when, the people closest to you don't. The applause came again, louder. I left the stage, crystal award in hand, and returned to my seat. I didn't look at my family. Didn't need to. The rest of the ceremony continued. Rachel's name was called with her cohort from Fairfield. No distinction, no recognition, just a name among many. She walked across the stage, accepted her diploma, walked off. Routine. Forgettable. When it ended, I met my parents in the lobby. My mother looked like she'd been crying. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years. My mother grabbed my arm. "Emma, sweetheart, we had no idea. You never said." "I told you I was getting my master's from Yale. I told you about the job promotion. I told you about the thesis publication. I told you everything. You just didn't hear it." Rachel stood behind them, very quiet, her diploma clutched in both hands. My father's voice was hoarse. "Emma, Derek, what did we do?" It was my mother who'd said it, not to me, but to him. Quiet. Horrified. I looked at all three of them, the people who were supposed to be my foundation, my support, my family, and I felt nothing but a distant, peaceful sadness. "You made a bet," I said quietly. "You invested everything in charisma and potential and the kind of spark that looks good at parties, and you divested in discipline, resilience, and quiet excellence. That was your choice. These are your consequences." My mother started to speak, but I held up a hand. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even hurt. I'm just done. Done needing your approval. Done shrinking so Rachel can shine. Done being the daughter who doesn't matter." I adjusted the award in my hands, feeling its weight. Solid. Real. Earned. "I hope you're proud of yourselves," I said quietly, "because I'm proud of me, and that's all I've ever needed." I walked away, got in my car, drove home to my small apartment with my Crystal Award and my Yale diploma and my hard-won self-respect. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely, perfectly free. That was 3 months ago. My parents have called 17 times. I've answered twice, both conversations brief and cordial. They want to make things right. Invest in my future now, help with my student loans. I've declined, politely but firmly. Rachel sent a long text 2 weeks after the ceremony. An apology, sort of. A lot of, "I didn't realize," and "I never meant to," and "Can we talk?" I responded with kindness but clarity. I forgive her, but forgiveness doesn't mean restoration. Some distances are permanent. They asked me to Thanksgiving. I said no. They asked about Christmas. I said I'd think about it. The truth is, I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around their validation or their guilt. I'm building something entirely my own. Work is extraordinary. I'm implementing changes in the critical care division that are already improving nurse retention by 23%. My research is being cited. I'm speaking at a conference in March. I've started dating someone, a pediatric surgeon I met at a hospital fundraiser. someone who thinks my ambition is attractive, not threatening. I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not in spite of what my parents did, and not even because of how I proved them wrong. I'm happy because I discovered something more powerful than revenge. Self-sufficiency, self-respect, the unshakable knowledge that my worth was never tied to their belief in me. Here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't always look like an affair or a lie. Sometimes it looks like a father who can't see past charisma to competence. Sometimes it looks like a mother who mistakes silence for absence of depth. Sometimes it looks like a sister who takes and never questions why you have nothing left to give. And healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like building a life so full and beautiful that the people who rejected you become irrelevant to your joy. My parents made a choice. They invested in potential they could see and divested from potential they couldn't imagine. That was their loss, not mine. Because I became exactly who I was meant to be, not for them, but despite them. And that's the most powerful revenge of all, becoming so undeniably yourself that their blindness becomes their burden to carry, not yours. I'm Emma Hartley. I'm 27 years old. I'm an associate director of nursing, a published researcher, a Yale graduate, and a woman who knows her worth down to the decimal. And I didn't need anyone's permission to become her. This was another story from Revenge Room, where we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next transformation. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you? How did you rebuild trust? What's one thing you learned about yourself after a betrayal? Share one moment in your healing journey that changed everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters, and you're not alone.